Is it possible to build a deck that can do well at regionals without breaking $100? Maybe. Let's find out. Welcome back to the Budget Archive. My name is Mitch, and thank you to TCG Architect for sponsoring this video. Let's get on with the list. Now, as you'll see today's list is a little bit different to normal. Normally we stick to a $50 budget and try not to go over it where possible. However, as we're coming into the competitive season, I know there are going to be a few players out there that are kind of trying to get into playing at regionals, playing at possibly nationals, although definitely not a deck I'd probably take to nationals at this point. But just they are players that don't quite have the budget that some players have. However, they still want to have a deck that allows them to actually compete and have a chance at doing well at these bigger competitions. And I felt like Windrai here was a perfect opportunity for that, because a lot of the cards in the deck are actually pretty cheap. There's just a few in here that cost a little bit more than normal, and we can look at possibly replacing those with other options. However, I felt that this is one of those decks where I haven't been able to quite make a budget version work, just because the more expensive cards in the deck are a bit of a necessity in order to make the deck function as designed. However, as we'll go through the upgrades later on, you'll see there are a few more cards I have had to take out of the deck in order to bring that budget down a bit. However, there is definitely a good core here in order to build on, especially if you're wanting to go to regionals and internationals. Moving on to deck list, we've got Spirit of Fortuitous Wind. This has on enter Glimpse 7, then draw 7 cards in your memory. Now the thing to note here is that if you are playing against an aggro deck and they're going first, this can be a very deadly thing to have, because if they get to set up on their first turn, you go onto your first turn, draw everything into memory, only having one card in hand, and then they get their second turn, allowing them to level up, allowing them to draw more cards and play more things out. There are some aggro decks out there that can do 15 damage on turn 2. It isn't very common, but it can happen, so you just have to be mindful of this. Some players will run Serene Spirit over this and run a lower win count, and then other players will just run normal wind in order to draw into hand straight away and then be able to play your prevention down, stopping you from dying. For the Rise, we've got Rise Spellcrafter. On enter, put 2 enlightenment counters on it. And then Rai Archmage, inherited effect of whenever you activate your first mage action each turn, put an enlightenment counter in champion. Of course, enlightenment counters have the static effect of remove 3 and draw a card. So this is definitely one of those things that allows you to progress through the game, draw a lot more cards than your opponent, and keep your influence very high, where your opponent's is going to start to dwindle as they level up. Rise Stormseer. Rai gets +1 level for each arcane element mage spell card in your banishment. It is important to note that in this deck, we've got cards like Arcane Elemental here, which is an arcane card. However, it's a mage elemental, not a mage spell. So Rai over here does not have the +1 level from that being in banishment. So you do have to keep in mind and keep an eye out for exactly what mage cards in your banishment are arcane and what arcane cards aren't mage. Then we've got on to a bit of our prevention. We've got Safeguard Amulet. This is definitely one of the more useful regalia at the moment, I think, just because there's a lot of aggro, a lot of Fire Daichown, Fire Xander, a lot of the lower to the ground decks that want to deal damage fast coming into the meta. Just as people try to work out things, a lot of people often gravitate towards those comfy picks of aggro decks, as well as like the Merlins and the Tristans. We then have Shard of Empowerment. This is Banish It, Empower 2. So in this deck, there's quite a few things where you want to have like Advent of Stormcall here, which has efficiency, costing 15. So Shard Empowerment can be a good thing to bring out to pop on a specific turn in order to bring the cost of the next thing you activate down by 2 levels. Or, sorry, activate it as if you were +2 levels. That can come into effect, be mindful. So this is really one of those ones, especially if you're really close to being able to play that Advent for free. Being able to just bring this out and then give you that ability is pretty good. Terrafring stops your opponent from attacking for a turn or attacking multiple times. Tome of Sorcery. Now you will see some people run Tome of Knowledge over this. I am a Tome of Knowledge lover. Effectively, I would prefer to run Tome of Knowledge in this deck. However, Tome of Sorcery allowing you to tap it and power 1, then bring out the Prison and get the on-enter effect of draw a card in the memory off of the Tome of Sacred Lightning as well, effectively just means that you're going to be in a situation where you've not only drawn one into memory already, you're then going to draw a second one to memory and be able to tap this immediately to empower as well, giving you +2 level to the next thing you activate this turn. When you combine that with a Sharded Empowerment, you're going to be +4 level to the next thing you activate this turn. Quite often going into turn 4, 5, maybe 6, you can be in a situation where you're going to be having an event a lot earlier than you normally would be. We then go on Purifying Thurible. Definitely one of those regalia that's kind of needed in the current metagame, especially with a lot of Limited Guide and Floating Memory running around. This is one of those regalia where you don't have to use it early on. You can also often just bring it out, materialize it, have it on the field, just sitting there, holding up a full of hands, waiting for opponent to do something that you care about their graveyard, and then just popping it in response to then banish their whole graveyard or a large chunk of it depending on what they've got. It's also a really good early game option in order to get rid of that Limited Guide, get rid of that floating memory, and just be able to control the game state. Arcanist Prison. Now, if you're having to materialize this in a game, something's probably gone wrong. You pretty much never want to actually have this go off. It's going to be a banish effect with Fluffy Shopkeep over here, which of course has the on enter of banish 2 cards from material deck, draw a card in memory. Being a 1/3 interceptor is a great way to stop yourself from dying early in the game. So this is going to be one of the main ones that you're going to banish with that, along with Storm Tyrant's Eye. Or Storm Tyrant's Eye is a card that can be kept for the late game in certain matchups where you want to be digging for those arcane cards. However, we aren't running a huge quantity of arcane cards. We are running a lot, but compared to Sunrise, not quite as much. So we're going to be in... Ooh, apologies, I think I just scrolled down. Hope that's... yeah, it's centered. We're good. This has the effect of banish it, reveal cards from the top of your deck until you reveal an arcane elemental card. Deal unpreventable damage to your champion equal to the amount of cards revealed this way. Put one of those cards in your hand and the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. It effectively allows you to just dig through your deck and find a specific card that you're looking for. So it can be a good late game option, but it is one of those ones that you're generally going to banish the Fluffy early on. But then you can also banish like a Tariff Ring or a Safeguard Amulet, depending on the matchup, if you see that you're not going to need one of these. Tome of Sacred Lightning, as we mentioned, you're going to bring out Tome of Sorcery first, and then use this elemental bonus to banish the book. Have this activated from your material deck, and have it enter the field with all abilities of the banished card. It's effectively going to enter with the on-enter effect of draw card in memory, and then the tap and power effect. A lot of the time you probably aren't going to be tapping that empower effect with this. You're going to be using it, the banished one, to banish card from your memory and draw a card. You're generally going to be intentionally banishing a arcane element card from your memory, and then drawing a card to replace it, giving you that +1 level anyway. Moving on to the main board, we've got Careful Study. This is one of the best cards in this deck, because not only does it have efficiency, so in the late game, once you've been leveling up and banishing all those arcane spell cards to get to level 3, you're going to be level 8 most likely, sometimes a little bit less, but even paying 1 for this doesn't matter too much. So quite often being a free cast of putting 5 enlightenment counters on your champion, and because this is a mage action, using Riot Archmage's inherit effect, you're going to often be putting 6 enlightenment counters on your champion if this is the first one you've played during your turn, effectively turning this into a draw 2 for 1, which in this game, any card that goes +1 is generally pretty good. Then got Dungeon Guide. Dungeon Guide has been a staple for a long time. We haven't seen it in a deck on this channel yet, just because it has been so bloody expensive, holding a $15 to $30 price point for so long. However, with the printing of the Mordred Recollection deck recently, it's dropped down to, I believe it's about $7 to $8 depending on the copy currently. And I think that's a great price point. I do think it can possibly come down a little bit more and come down to about the $5 mark, but I wouldn't hold my breath too much. Picking these up at $7 each is probably a great way to go at the moment. And these are used in pretty much every level 3 deck there is. If there's any level 3 deck on my channel, you can put Dungeon Guide into it. Fluffy Shopkeep, as we talked about earlier, the on-enter effect being great to banish some cards. And it is also important to note that when we look at Arcane Elemental down here, having the class bonus of costing 1 less to activate for each Arcane Elemental card in banishment, that is not Arcane spell cards like Rise Storm Seer up here. That is just any arcane card in banishment. So by banishing the Arcanist Prism and the Storm Tyrant's Eye, you are also giving the Arcane Elemental this effect in order to make it a lot cheaper to play, and quite often it's going to be just a free cast constantly, and as we'll see soon, there are some tricks you can do with that. The Fluffy is going to be a main way of getting those into banishment early on, enabling you to have some explosive turns once you go level 3. Mnemonic Charm, it's on you to draw a card of memory, sacrifice it in power 2, and then another good early play that replaces itself and then gives you the opportunity to play something like the Advent of the Stormcaller early on in the late game, before you normally would have the chance to otherwise. Peaceful Union, 4 cost, activate it if you haven't declared an attack this turn. You're pretty much never going to have declared an attack with this deck. Dungeon Guide's the only creature that's ever going to attack, and just be mindful not to attack with it first, as some people do, and then try play this. But until the beginning of your next turn, you and target player can't declare attacks, and then banish this. Yeah, I mean, it's not a mage spell, so you don't get the alignment counter off it, but stopping your opponent from attacking completely can just shut some decks down, and having multiple of these chain turn after turn after turn can end up in situations where you just have to influence in the powered in order to close the game out. Scry the Skies. Now quite often in this deck you want to be finding the exact cards you want at the right time, and once you've gone to Rise Stormseer, you can often be level 8, 9, 10 going into the late game. So being able to play Scry the Skies, glimpsing the top 10 cards of your deck. Remember, at that point, you're probably already drawn 20 to 25 cards from your deck. So effectively, you're looking through a third of what's left in your deck, searching for the cards that you want, stacking them on top, putting the rest on the bottom, and being able to chain these one after another along with something like a careful study in order to then draw those cards you've then put on top can just close out games out of nowhere. Calming Breeze. Between a turn of 3 or less damage, we doubt your champion and prevent that damage. Level 1+ floating memory. Being a 2 cost, fast speed, prevention. It's great for those low to the ground aggro decks that are dealing 1, 2, 3 damage max for each instance of damage. Some decks might run 4 copies of this. I just feel that because you're trying to banish stuff from your memory quite often, the floating memory doesn't come to effect too often. Yes, it can be good in the late game if you want to bring something like a Tome of Sorcery out without losing that influence, and then also being able to effectively go up 1 influence with this. But it's just one of those cards. It's just a good bit of prevention. You could look at putting something like Resolute in instead. However, there is a lot of Spellslinger decks around at the moment, so that's something to be cautious of. Now moving on to the meat of the deck. So the whole point of this deck effectively is to play Arcane Elemental down, attack with it, dealing 7, triggering its on attack effect at the beginning of your next end phase, banish it, and then effectively playing something like Disorienting Winds or Summon Gale, which both have efficiency, so often, especially if you've already played Arcane Elemental on the field, it's going to be free for both these. And then this is return target ally to its owner's hand. Disorienting Winds is the exact same thing, except you also draw a card. The Disorienting Winds is the one you want to go with first, because you're going to have the more options in your hand then. However, just having either of these or 2 or 3 of these along with an elemental can often close the game out pretty fast when you're able to attack for 28 damage in a single turn with 1 ally. Now, Advent of the Stormcaller. I've talked about it a few times already, but I haven't gone over the effect. This is another way you can close out the game. It effectively is a 15 cost that has efficiency, so it comes down based on your level. And in Rye, especially when we go on top of all the different empowerment effects like Monk Charm, Charm Empowerment, you can often end up casting this for free. And it's revealed the top level cards of your deck. You may banish any amount of Arcane Elemental cards from among them. For each card banished this way, choose a unit and deal 2 damage to it. Put the rest of the real cards on the top or bottom of the deck in any order. So it does a few things. Not only does it add cards to your banishment to up the level of Rye or add to the amount of arcane cards for Arcane Elemental, but it also is doing 2 damage for each arcane card banished from among them. And it's also stacking the top of your deck. You don't have to banish all those arcane cards. If you want to keep Erratic Bolt, you want to keep your Arcane Blasts, you can keep them on the top of your deck. Nowhere does it say you have to banish the arcane cards. You just are able to banish arcane cards as you choose, and then put the rest of them back on top. The other thing to notice is that Empowerment, the next spell you activate this turn, activates and resolves as if your champion was +2 level for a Sharp Empowerment. All Empowerment has that same reminder text. So not only are you getting the reduction in the efficiency cost by activating this, but also reveal the top level includes that +2 level. So if you're playing this for free, you're going to reveal the top 15 cards of your deck. And in a deck like this that's pretty heavy in the arcane cards, you're going to quite often be able to do 10 to 20 damage with just this card. It is important to note though that it is 2 damage at a time. So if your opponent is able to play something like their own Calming Breeze, all of these are going to do absolutely no damage. So that's where you want to then be able to just think about what you actually want to banish and what you might want to just keep instead. This is one of those ones where you have to respond to it before it resolves. Your opponent can't wait for you to reveal stuff off the top to then decide, oh, actually now I want to try to prevent it because you've got enough to kill me. They have to do it before it resolves. Otherwise, it just resolves all at once and they're not going to be able to stop them from taking damage. Arcane Blast. If you've watched any Arcane decks in the past, Arcane Blast is a staple of all Ride decks. Fire, Wind. Sure someone's done a Water Ride deck at some point. I've seen it in a while. But 11 cost, has efficiency, so as long as you're level 11, it's going to be free. And deal 11 damage to target champion. Now, it's only to champions, so it's not going to help you deal with any of the Shinjus running around at the moment. However, it is definitely one of those big closeout cards. If you have 2 of these in your hand and you've already dealt a bit of chip damage throughout the game, you can close out a game pretty easily if your opponent's not ready for it. Okay, Elemental, we've already talked about this. One of the staple ways to kill the game. Arcane Sight, 0 cost, your champion gets +1 level into any turn and draw a card. Also a mage action, so you're going to get the +1 level onto, +1 enlightenment counter onto your champion as well, allowing you to continue drawing more cards that way. Not only replacing itself, but giving you +1 level into your turn. If you can chain 2, 3 of these in a row, you can end up with turns where you're able to play Arcane Blast where you otherwise might not have been able to. Erratic Bolt, another spell damage source in order to close the game out. 4 costs, deal level damage to target unit. This can deal with some allies on the board. Of course, most of Shinjus have spell shrouds, so this is not going to deal with them. However, it can deal with like Majestic Spirit and such. You may banish 2 cards at random from your memory. If you do, draw 2 cards. Good card. It's a good card. Not only is it dealing level damage, which in this deck course can be up to 15 damage possibly, but it's also then banishing 2 cards from memory, which are going to probably be arcane, giving you +2 levels on top of that, and then replacing those 2 cards. So effectively what this means is it's only going to cost you 2 to play it down at the end of it, replacing the 2 of the 4 cards paid, and then dealing a ton of damage as well. Power Overwhelming. Remove any amount of alignment counters from your champion. The champion gets +1 level for each counter removed this way until end of turn. Now, there are going to be situations where you've got 5, 6, 7 alignment counters in your champion because you haven't needed to draw the cards yet. And you go straight to level 3, you're level 7 possibly, and popping a Power Overwhelming will enable you to then Advent of Stormcaller on turn 4 as soon as you've leveled up, which in a lot of situations could possibly even close the game out then and there. So this is definitely one of those ones that you want to possibly look at keeping if you've already got an Advent as well. And it's just another good option to have in order to accelerate the game state if you think your opponent's not ready for it. Shattering Discharge. Now this is one of those cards that is kind of needed for the deck, but not needed at the same time. So as we'll see, we've only got 1 copy in this deck currently. Because this is up to close to $10 a copy currently, it definitely put our budget way over. So I decided to just remove these from the deck as I felt Fluffy and Dungeon Guides were kind of a little bit more important to the deck's overall game plan. But Shattering Discharge is definitely one of those cards that if you've got some, or if you are able to find some at a decent price, I definitely get to put into this list. It has, you may activate this card from your banishment as long as you have a charge counter on it. It gets a charge counter if you've banished it from your memory. So effectively, if you keep leveling up after you've gone to level 1 already, keep a note, this will banish from your memory before you're leveled up. So if you're going from Spirit to Rye level 1, this gets banished for that. it will not get that charge counter because you are not currently level 1 when it gets banished. But it then deals 2 unpreventable damage to target champion and banish it. Not only does it banish itself, it will give you the enlightenment counter off Rai Archmage, but then also it is 2 unpreventable damage. This will pop spell shields. It will be able to kill allies that might have a prevention on them. It's one of those cards that's so versatile in how it's used that it is just a necessity for a lot of these arcane decks that are going to do really well. Spell Shield Arcane. Speaking of shields, the next time damage we dealt to your champion this turn, prevent that damage. Put an amount of enlightenment counters on your champion equal to the amount of damage prevented this way. Now there are a lot of OTK decks out there at the moment. Seiryu, Merlin, Tristan. A lot of these decks are relying on you not being ready for them to do a huge amount of damage at once. And this is an amazing thing to be able to hold up, effectively telling your opponent that they can't try kill you because you're going to be able to prevent it with this, which will then give you a massive advantage. If you catch your opponent off guard, being able to play this to prevent a stupid amount of damage, you can end up drawing 3, 4, 5 cards immediately after it's been prevented, and your opponent's not really going to be able to do much in response to it. Stabilizing, not going to try to say that second word. 1 cost slow speed. Putting a new amount of cards from your memory on the bottom of your deck in any order. Enjoy that many cards in your memory. Fast bonus and level 7 bonus of draw a card. Now this is probably the card I replaced with Shattering Discharge for. It's not the best arcane card in the game, but I do think in this deck where you are trying to get rid of the likes of the Calming Breezes, the Dungeon Guides, maybe the Fluffies, maybe Monarch Charm in the late game, where you don't really need them, it is a good option to be able to play it, get all those cards to the bottom, replace your memory, and then be able to go into your next turn with a refreshed hand that's able to do a lot more. Voltaic Sphere. I love Voltaic Sphere. It's better in the fire version because you're able to discard the Creative Shock and then banish it from your graveyard. But just being able to go level 3, pay 2 to play this, remove one of your opponent's best allies, and then be able to banish this from your graveyard in order to make not only another arcane card like the Advent cheaper, but then also giving you that +1 level on Moroi Stormseer, giving you a good position where it effectively turns into not only ally removal, but then also +2 level on a single arcane elemental activation. Moving on to sideboard, we've got Alicist. Alicist is one of those cards that I could almost move into main board. It is a Regalia that is 0 cost at the beginning of your reckless phase, put an age counter on a potion you control. You're not doing that. But it has level 4 plus of banish it, destroy target item or weapon with memory cost 0 or reserve cost 4 or less. Now, our main threats in this are going to be maybe Safeguard Amulet or Terrafring, just something that's going to stop you from playing your game plan. So if your opponent's playing a lot of annoying Regalia, this might be one of the Regalia you want to bring in for something like Terrafring or Safeguard that's not going to do you too well in that matchup, and then enable you to have this on the board, waiting for your opponent to try bring out whatever's going to be preventing you from doing your game plan, and then being able to immediately just pop in and get rid of that. Blanche Shattering Saint. Blanche has no right to be as cheap as it is at the moment. It is such a powerful card, being able to prevent stuff at fast speed. It's just one of those cards that I am shocked is so cheap currently. I think it's about $4 or $5 a copy, which is, yeah, it just shouldn't be. But it's a 2 cost 1/2 with level 2 plus fast activation. You're generally going to get to level 2 plus pretty quick in this deck. If another unit you control be dealt non-attack damage, prevented amount of damage equal to the amount of cards in your memory. In a deck like this, where we can often get to 5 to 10 cards in hand pretty easily on going to level 3, you're going to often be able to put quite a few cards in memory and effectively prevent any spell damage done to your champion at once. The only thing that might get over this a little bit will be like a fireball dealing like 12, 13, 14 damage. But even in those situations, being able to prevent 8 of 12 damage can just be a game changer. Resolute Stand. As we mentioned earlier, can replace Calming Breeze with Resolutes if you don't want to buy Calming Breezes. However, Resolute is one of those ones that against aggro attack decks, you definitely want to have access to this. So if you are versing an aggro deck that you're a bit afraid of losing to, bring this in, take out something like maybe a Scry the Skies. Peaceful can be a little bit iffy if they're playing a lot of spell damage, and then you can possibly look at just taking like Monk Charms out, something that's not quite a needed card in the deck. Ravaging Tempest has efficiency as well, being an 8 cost. Banish all allies. For each ally banished this way, its controller draws a card. Now it says a couple different uses. You're pretty much always going to be bringing this in against ally decks, mainly the likes of Tristan or the CUs, where they're going to have the allies that aren't really targetable, aren't killable by you, and are going to be causing problems. And being able to just completely get rid of them, seeing as this just says banish all allies, it's not targeting them. It's around Spell Shroud, it's around Omni Shroud, it gets around effectively any prevention that something like Omni Shadows has. It's just a good thing to bring in against a wide range of matchups. Now, if you do find in game 1 that somehow you end up like 3 fluffies on board, a couple Dungeon Guides on board because your opponent is not playing a single ally and isn't worrying about removing allies in a Rye deck, you can also have this brought in, get those allies set up in the early game, and then once you go to level 3, use this to banish all your own allies and draw a whole bunch of cards. It's a little bit of a niche situation, but I have done it before, so I thought I'd just mention it. Temptress Seraphim, 3 cost 2/2, fast activation, advanced Imbue 2. We've got a lot of advanced cards in this deck, going to be okay. On enter, as a spell, if it is imbued, deal 4 damage to target attacking ally. So not only are you getting a 2/2 board, but you're also going to be able to kill a majority of allies that your opponent's going to be attacking with. So you're not going to be taking the damage from the ally, you're going to be removing it from the field and then leaving yourself with a 2/2 unit on the board. You probably want to make sure that your opponent hasn't got another ally behind the line ready to just kill this straight away, because you want to be able to go into your turn and then have a 2/2 board that at least attacks your opponent once, or possibly be able to attack and remove something that your opponent's already attacked with previously. Moving on to some upgrades, we've got 3 visits here. Comes in at $43.15 each. That is for the cheapest version, which is currently the Ultra version. It's probably not needed for the deck, but it is a great thing to have just because you're able to then activate this not once, not twice, but 3 times. Getting the mage action effect from Rye level 2, putting the alignment counter on, while also being able to glimpse 2 and then also recover, giving you the bit of staying power against those aggro decks and being able to search for the specific answers that you need in every match. Then have Topsy Decree at $42 each. Topsy is such a versatile card, having all 3 effects of giving you a champion Spell Shroud, up to 1 target opponent discarding a card, and then also choose 2 cards from a single graveyard and banish them. Now, a deck list does run quite a bit of norm cards, so you can often find yourself in a situation where you're able to imbue this, and it can give you the option in order to then not only make your opponent discard a card from the hand, but then also banish whatever they've discarded along with something else. But also, when you're coming against things like Merlin, it's a great way to stop yourself from dying at instant speed, because Spell Shroud just will stop the fireball they've got coming at your face. Showing Discharge, we've already talked about this. It's actually $9.22, not the $10 I mentioned. However, it is just such a great card for this deck that if you are looking at playing this competitively at like the regional level, I'd recommend going at 4 copies of this. Raziel, Archangel of Libra. This is one of the new angels that they've brought into the game. Has Arcane and Astra Imbue 3. Of course, we're Arcane, so we're going to have the Arcane side of this. On enter, if it is imbued, banish 2 cards at random from your memory. If you do, glimpse 3, and then put the top 2 cards you deck into your memory. So not only are you able to then effectively guarantee you're going to banish a couple Arcane cards, you're able to stack the top of your deck, draw 2 cards into memory, and then go into your next turn, level up, banish more Arcane cards that you've just guaranteed by glimpsing away anything that wasn't Arcane, and setting yourself up for going to level 3 and just having a ton of Arcane or any banishment, then you start playing your game plan fast. Finally, we have Lost Providence, $42.49 currently. That is for the current RDO version, not for this version. This version is still well over $100. However, I just prefer this art, so I decided to put that in here. It's a Divine Relic with 0 cost and hindered. You may activate it from your material deck. If you do it, enters Ephemeral. Doesn't matter much. You're generally going to be doing it from your material deck, and Ephemeral just means that when it leaves the field, it's going to get banished. Maybe your opponent wants to suppress it to stop you drawing a card, but they're losing a card doing that anyway, so it doesn't matter too much. Tap it, banish it, draw a card. Basically a GCR that you can activate at normal speed during your main phase. So this is one of those cards that, because Rye has so many crucial materializations, you want to be able to bring something out during your normal turn without having to waste materialization on it. Whereas Grand Crusader's Ring, although you can activate straight away, you are wasting that materialization. Lost Province is a great idea to have for decks like this, where you want to be able to control what you're bringing out at what points. Moving on to the deck list pricing, we have the material deck coming in at $5.98, the main deck coming in at $73.45, and the sideboard coming in at $20.56. Now, material deck, very cheap. Durables only $2.70, not too bad there. I'll probably put that into most winter budget decks anyway. Dungeon Guides, $7.11 each currently. The cheapest we've ever seen it. Cheapest we will ever see it. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. It's slowly been ticking down, so we might see it hit the $5 mark. Not too sure though. Fluffy Shop Keats, only $3.07 each. These would have stayed in a budget version as well. Just such a great card. Calming Breeze, $4.50 each. These would have come out of any budget version I built that was within the $50 price point, hence why I went to the $100 price point, just because it's a little bit easier to keep a deck like this together. We then have Shatter and Discharge at $9.22. Of course, I would go up to 4 copies of this if you can get it within your budget, but because Dungeon Guide's already taken up $28 effectively of your $100 budget, it's 1/4 there. And then once you add in a couple Karmic Breezes and then the Advent, $2.45 each, you're getting up to near that 50% of your budget just for those. And then once you add in all the other 50-cent cards, 25-cent cards, it does slowly add up. Sideboard being at $20.56, mainly because the Blanches at $4.13 each, and Temptress Seraphim at $2.77 each. Now I probably would go down to like 2 Ravaging Tempest and then up to a 3rd Seraphim in the sideboard. Blanche I'll probably keep out. It is Resolute, you could probably go down a couple copies and possibly add something more expensive to the sideboard. Maybe another Regalia that you want to deal with certain matchups like Nullifying Mantle or something along those lines. If there is a lot of rendings and such being played, it just depends on your local meta, as there's a wide range of ways that you can build a sideboard, and it all depends on your playstyle and what you want to do. Blanche, I mean, Blanche probably wouldn't have been in the budget version of the deck. However, in this version, I do think it is the perfect thing to have. $4.13 each isn't too expensive, but it is one of those cards where you start looking and it's like all 3 of them, that's $12 there. That's a 10th of your budget already. So is it worthwhile? I think it is. But that's just one of those things you have to look at and decide for yourself. So ultimately, all this up comes to $99.99. 99. Yeah. That was an accident. I did not mean to make this hit 1 cent off $100. I was adding it up and it was, I think, $108 something, and I ended up taking out a Shattering Discharge just because I decided that although I wanted to have a couple in there, I wanted to keep this deck below $100. I wanted to be true to the budget and I didn't want to have it go over. And when I re-added everything up, it came to $99.99. Now, of all things, prices are fluid. Everything's always changing. Can't guarantee this price is going to be the same as it was yesterday or what it will be tomorrow. But this just gives you a good overview of what currently it's sitting at and what you'll be looking at if you want to build a deck along these lines in order to actually go to a regionals or a competition that's maybe slightly above the locals. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments down below what other decks you'd love to see. Until next time, stay safe.